Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us to today's webinar titled, What is Coffee Cherry? Innovation and Sustainability. Joining us today, we have Carol Widmeyer. She is the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Sales at the Coffee Cherry Company. My name is Michelle Dunaway, and I'm with Novus Coffee Imports. We are a specialty coffee importer with deep commitment to sustainability and to source high-quality coffees. I will be the moderator today. So what is Coffee Cherry? In the quest for innovation to satisfy new generations of consumers and to address the pressing issue of sustainability in the coffee industry, a new product has emerged, Coffee Cherry, also known as cáscara. Cáscara is the word in Spanish for husk, that is the protective outer portion that surrounds the seeds of green coffee beans. So coffee cherry or cáscara is the fruit byproduct of green coffee bean production. While sometimes the cáscara is used as a compost for fertilizer, the vast majority is discarded, either dumped into rivers or left to rot in the fields. It is estimated that over 46 billion pounds of cáscara byproduct are generated every single year. Carol will share with us more about coffee cherry. We'll learn about its flavor, functional nutrition, the economic impact. We'll talk about sustainability and also the future they envision for coffee cherry. So before further ado, Carol, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share with you more about the specifics of coffee cherry and how we take that cáscara and turn it into a food-safe ingredient. As Michelle mentioned, there is an inordinate amount of coffee cherry or cáscara byproduct that is created by the green coffee industry. And previously, there's been limited usage for it. Michelle mentioned compost. We know some have tried it in cattle feed. It has not been successful in large volume in terms of ways to handle the fruit and keep it out of fields or those rivers. So the founder of our company, the Coffee Cherry Company, and formerly Coffee Flour, was doing work down at mills in origin countries and saw these piles of fruit and thought that there just had to be something more effective to be done with that product. And as an engineer and an innovator, he took it upon himself to really create an idea and a way to transform that fruit, rather than allowing it to rot in fields, into a new ingredient in food and beverages. So it's really upcycling that byproduct. And upcycling is a word you will continue to hear more and more about as people try to address sustainability and create sustainable economic cycles. So we've created a specific process that is a wash process that is patent pending on a global basis to capture that fruit at origin with our partners there, using the majority of the equipment that they have on site, and turning that fruit through a dehydration process into an ingredient, a cáscara, that is food safe, which is critical. Many suppliers of cáscara are experienced coffee farmers, but they are not necessarily experienced in food ingredients. And the standards for food safety are very different there. And so it is also a benefit in the beverage industry to be able to apply those same standards. We also have special partners such as Mercon and Novus, who we work with hand in hand to capture that supply for upcycling. And so the opportunity there is, as the need for coffee cherry grows, we have the partnerships in place to be able to grow the supply and the volume necessary along with our customers. So the other thing that we do that is unique, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, not only do we offer a traditional cáscara product, which you see right here on the left of this image, but we created two different variations on this same product. One is what was originally called coffee flour, or is coffee cherry, fine powder. Looks, feels a lot like a cocoa powder. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that is used in foods. Also in the middle here is a flake that we've created, a flake size like a fanning grade teacup product that, frankly, was originally created to use our byproduct from milling to a fine powder. We have subsequently addressed that specifically to optimize it for use for steeping or extraction. In addition to being able to be used in baking and snack, it really is identified as a beverage base. So coffee cherry as an ingredient, it is 100% fruit, really acts as a flavor enhancer, whether it's in a baking and snack or it really even in beverages. Taking some of the other flavors there, it elevates those notes. It makes a wonderful base for beverages and for snacks that is exceptionally nicely flavored. It also allows for superfood levels of antioxidants. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those are because we know superfood can be an overused term. But in addition to the flavor and the innovation it drives, the production of coffee cherry creates new income streams for farmers by being paid for the fruit for the first time in many cases. And we'll talk more about what that impact can lead to, as well as measurable and traceable sustainability. We have the ability to identify the amount of fruit equated to the production of coffee cherry, and it has positive environmental impact, which we'll also explore in more detail later in this presentation. So we talked about flavor. As a flavor enhancer, it balances tart and sweet. It elevates existing notes. We've done several things with it in in chocolate, but in coffee, where it tamps down bitterness, which is a very nice thing for a middle grade coffee. But flavor, like any agricultural product, just like green beans that you may be more familiar with, varies by origin. So there are different flavor notes that come with each of those varietals. One can be more earthy, a little bit of leather and some citrus. Others are sweeter with a more berry forward flavor note. So there's lots of opportunity to create different products using that. In addition, this product is functionally nutritional. It has antioxidants, which we know contribute to brain health, and it has it in very high levels. It also, in a food format, it has significant amounts of dietary fiber. Some of that comes through in a beverage format, but not nearly as much as it would in a food format. There are also other micronutrients that might be beneficial to any products that you would be concepting, including a variety of, and we'll talk about these, iron, potassium, calcium, magnesium. And then we've talked about the economic impact, including the new revenue stream, but also new job creation, including jobs that are now open to women for the first time. Those of you familiar with green coffee know how large the coffee bags are when they're filled with green coffee and how heavy they are. When that same bag is filled with dehydrated cascara or coffee cherry, it is much lighter, making it now physically accessible to women to have those jobs in the mills. And then we've talked about sustainability in terms of keeping the fruit out of fields, but that also translates into reduced greenhouse gas emissions from rotting fruit. And we can quantify that information. Again, we'll touch on it in just a minute. So coffee cherry, in terms of being that new superfruit, again, we talked about those unique flavors, dried red fruit, more like raisiny type flavors, some citrus, some floral, some earthiness to it. Again, it will vary, and the levels of those flavors will vary greatly. So just as an aside, coffee cherry in any of its flavor profiles marries beautifully with orange. It is the top flavor, as well as chocolate. Also, the antioxidant levels that are near the power of wild those levels, and it is incredibly high in antioxidants. It's also got more fiber than whole wheat flour, more iron than you would have in spinach, more protein than in fresh kale, and then again, full of major nutrients such as potassium, magnesium, and then some of that plant protein. So it can be both it can be contributing really to a functional beverage as well as just a flavorful beverage. So we talked about how we make a difference in the production of coffee cherry. And sometimes it's very difficult to say, you know, things and programs and processes are sustainable, but then they ask you how. And it's not always as easy to quantify or to trace that impact. We have the ability to trace that impact. So when we talk about the environment, we can measure the reduction in methane gas emissions by equating the amount of fruit kept out of a field. We know from working with our partners like Mercon and Novus what the relationship is to fruit to create coffee cherry. So we are able to make those calculations. We can then turn that calculation into a reduction in methane gas emissions. From a nutrition standpoint, we have the ability to help improve nutrition, not just in origin countries, but globally and wherever your markets are. And then we've talked about the revenue from farmers. We as a B corporation and as a participant in the coffee industry have made a commitment to pay farmers for the price of the fruit. It is also creating the jobs we talked about, including those for women. And ultimately, as it's all important here that every one of us in this conversation has the ability to make money using this product. There is opportunity for you to create innovative and new products under your brand name. So when you ask about how we measure this, just as an example, if someone were to purchase 40,000 pounds, a truckload of coffee cherry, we can be able to tie that back to nearly 281,000 pounds of fruit kept out of fields and streams. That equates to 101,000 kilograms of less CO2 or methane gas emissions, and $1,200 in new revenue for farmers. And for those of us listening to this, $1,200 annually may not seem like a significant amount, but given the economies in origin countries, that can make a meaningful difference in a farmer's life. So how do you turn coffee cherry into something delicious? There are several ways from a beverage standpoint. One, whole cherry coffee. So this is really reuniting the flavors that started as one, taking the green beans and then in roasted and ground format and blending them with coffee cherry. So we recommend experimenting at about an 80% roasted and ground coffee plus 20% coffee cherry. It makes a great flavor. It takes away some bitterness. It adds some fruity notes back in. It is a cup of coffee, but it is an elevated cup of coffee. And if you happen to be producing K-cups, there are some cost advantages to doing this. If you assume that a typical K-cup takes 12 grams of roasted and ground coffee, when mixed with whole cherry coffee, because of whole cherry coffee cherry's ability to retain moisture, you really only need 10 grams total. So you would put in 8 grams of roasted and ground coffee and 2 grams of coffee cherry. And you still get the same great tasting cup of coffee with less total product in there. And just as an aside to that, coffee cherry may look more like a tea. It may have flavor notes more like a tea. However, it extracts much more like coffee. So you get a great tasting cup of coffee out of that same extraction time in a traditional K-cup machine. So it also, we talked about it having flavor notes like a tea, makes a phenomenal ready to drink beverage, whether it's still or sparkling. Again, as a tea base for a beverage like that, it accepts a variety of flavors, everything from citrus, again, I mentioned orange earlier, to chocolate notes or warm spice notes, also some florals, depending on the varietal in which you're using a base. So it's fabulous in that format. It also works really well as a bag tea. Again, it's a flavor innovation. And in that case, we typically are using our large piece or chopped, which many would call the traditional cascara, so that it has more visual appeal. Again, there's also an improved flavor and cost savings in those single-serve K-cups, because most tea takes longer to steep than a K-cup process allows. So you have to do some manipulation of the tea at instant teas to get that fuller flavor. Because coffee cherry steeps or extracts like coffee, you get a phenomenal tea-like beverage by putting it into a K-cup. And again, only 7 grams of coffee cherry in that K-cup. So a great opportunity there. The other thing, just to be fun, beers and spirits. People are using coffee cherry or looking at it for flavor innovation and to tap into the trend that is premiumization, giving new flavors, giving new benefits, differentiating some of those beers and spirits. And also, we have found and have the experience at this point with making a difference in soluble coffee using coffee cherry from some of the flavor benefits. It adds complexity to what are typically Robusta beans that are used for soluble coffee, and they may not be the highest grade beans. So it adds some flavor notes in, it takes away some of the metallic notes that you might find in soluble coffee, adds, again, some complexity to those flavors, and then adds a bit of mouthfeel. So it gives a premium experience to a cup of soluble coffee. And again, with more conversation, we believe there's also cost savings in the production, but that would be a separate and individual conversation to be had. So the reason we talk about tea, and many of you, while you're coffee producers, coffee roasters, coffee shops, there's also, in many cases, a beverage and a tea opportunity there. Because right now, as we're looking in the ready-to-drink area, it really is tea that is driving that market growth at the moment. So in addition to what you are doing in coffee, it is always worthwhile to take a look at the tea side of this as well, and still maintain your roots in coffee. Because coffee cherry tea hits all of those critical consumer needs right now. They want and we've noticed now they're more willing to pay for it than they have in the past. Consumers are also looking for natural and naturality, and that's even heightened in 2020, given all of us having to address the strains of COVID-19 and looking for a sense of security. Natural ingredients are important. They want transparency. This too is elevated in this time. Convenience and taste are important. That is table stakes, but Cascara or coffee cherry offers that. And again, given the nutritional benefits in it, there is ability to participate in proactive health management with these drinks. We've talked about premiumization. It is what's driving this. The reference right now is the alcoholic beverage industry, but it really fits to everything from bottled coffees and coffee drinks to tea and tea drinks. So it's very important. Right now, again, that 23% growth in products that are supporting functional immune system benefits. Coffee cherry fits right in that niche. And when consumers want to be thrilled with something, they want something that's exciting and innovative and has a new flavor. And that is what coffee cherry brings to the table. We also have sustainability, and we are sincere and able to trace the impact of our sustainability. And again, when I mentioned earlier, it is 100% dried fruit, nothing else. It is a clean, healthy ingredient. It is non-GMO project verified. It is allergen-free. It is a natural ingredient. Here are just a couple of products on the marketplace right now that are made with coffee cherry or Cascara. There are many more, but Stumptown has produced Strange Magic. And there's a quick comment from the head brewer at Stumptown, who loves it because it's utilizing that coffee plant in a different way. But he also loves those flavor notes of dried fruit and black tea. He likes the light caffeination. So in mentioning that, coffee cherry does retain about 1/3 the caffeine levels that a traditional coffee would offer. It's also easily blendable with other flavors. And that one consumer trend we didn't hit on the earlier slide, plant-based. Plant-based is the panacea right now for every product on the marketplace. And this is 100% fruit, therefore it is absolutely plant-based. Riff, Alter Ego, another great cold beverage, sparkling. And then in the bottom left, that is Whidbey Island Tea that is doing a dried tea product out there. So lots of opportunity to create innovative beverages using coffee cherry as the base. So really the question is, with this information, with access to coffee cherry, how can the Coffee Cherry Company and Novus put coffee cherry to work for you?
Thank you, Carol. I have a question for you.
Certainly.
Yeah, can you share how the Coffee Cherry Company is ensuring that all the coffee cherry products that you have meet food safety standards?
Certainly. Utilizing the process that we developed and put into place at the mills with our partners such as Mercon, there are very specific and strict guidances to that process. It is a proprietary process, so I can't really talk about the detail behind it. Okay. But we have very specific specifications in terms of microbials that all of the finished product must meet. So we train our partners at the mills to work through this process. And again, it's a washed process and then a dried process. And I can tell you that there is a combination of mechanical and patio drying that's a part of the process. Okay. But we then have specifications that have been established, and we test at 3 different points in our process. One at the mill, One, when we receive shipment from origin country.
Okay.
And then the last time is after we do the finished milling. And so we have the laboratory testing to prove that our product is in fact food safe at the highest standards.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that is very important when we're bringing a new product out to the market, that it's we make sure that it's safety safe for consumers to
Yes.
to have it. And one last question, because I think we're running out of time, and you mentioned something about the caffeine content. So I'm curious, so compared to a cup of coffee, I think a cup of coffee has about 95 milligrams of caffeine in an 8-ounce cup of coffee. And I'm sure it will depend on concentration levels, but
Correct.
how much caffeine is there in a cup of Cascara tea?
I'd have to go back to the specific numbers, but it is approximately 1/3. Now, again, there's a range, but it is approximately 1/3. Okay. So when you think about this, it may be similar to dark chocolate or cocoa.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of caffeine, but not a significant amount.
Okay. Okay.
So it's great for a kind of caffeine light for a mid-afternoon pick-me-up. Or a drink that is specialized to be lower in caffeine, but still give you a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Well, I believe we're running out of time, Carol. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention?
I believe I've touched on all of the critical parts. I think, and thank you for bringing up food safety again, because we know that there are multiple Cascara suppliers in the marketplace, but we also know that there has been inconsistency in the product that has come into the United States. And so it is incredibly important for us as the producers of Coffee Cherry that what we are supplying you is something that you can feel secure about and be confident that it is a food safe product that you are offering to your consumers. And we are happy to answer as many questions as we possibly can to ensure that you have that comfort level. And again, it's only because we have the partnership with our suppliers like Merck and Novus to make that happen.
Okay. Well, thank you, Carol. We hope you all have enjoyed this session. As Carol mentioned, Coffee Cherry offers food-safe, high-volume coffee cherry from multiple origins for use in beverages and food. For farmers, this product means an additional source of income. And for us, in the consumer side of the industry, it's the potential to create groundbreaking products to satisfy new generations of consumers. If you have any questions that we haven't covered today, or you'd like to request samples of coffee cherry or coffee flour, please feel free to email Carol. Her email is on the screen, cw@coffeecherryco.com. You can also email myself at mdunaway@novuscoffee.com. Thank you, Carol, again, for sharing your knowledge, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Appreciate the invitation.
Thank you.